I'd shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one and reopening the next day as a museum of the deep state.
Yesterday, Kash Patel was confirmed as the new director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and at 44 years of age, the youngest FBI director in American history. I expect that many shared my belief that the Patel confirmation would be President Trump's most challenging and the one most likely to fail. And with a Senate vote of 51-49, it was about as close a call as we expected. The reason for this expectation, of course, is that Patel has promised to be a change agent of the FBI and to arm President Trump with the investigative and law enforcement resources he needs directed at America's enemies rather than at law-abiding American citizens. Of course, that means Patel presents a grave danger to many senior government officials who have long been neck deep in corrupting our national institutions and fattening their own wallets with political graft and worse. Think Epstein Island worse. In many ways, Patel was perhaps Trump's single most vital confirmation, which is why our headline for this show suggests that he is the final infinity stone in Trump's political gauntlet to take out the swamp. While I admire all of Trump's appointments, most of them could have been replaced with other qualified people had they failed confirmation. But a replacement for Patel to do what Patel has set out to do is hard to imagine. So what can we expect from Patel in the first few weeks of his leadership of the FBI? Let's talk about it, and of course, I'll share some funny memes as well. I'm attorney Andrew Branker for Law and Self-Defense, and if you like our content, then I'd like to ask you to hit those like and subscribe buttons and ring that bell. It really helps us out. That's what tells the YouTube algorithm to share our content more broadly, and it's free. So let's start with Patel's first post as FBI director, social media post, following yesterday's confirmation vote as he speaks directly to the American people as the new FBI director, and also notes something interesting and prophetic about Patel's X account. He writes, quote, "I am honored to be confirmed as the 9th director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Thank you to President Trump and Attorney General Bondi for your unwavering confidence and support. The FBI has a storied legacy, from the G-men to safeguarding our nation in the wake of 9/11. The American people deserve an FBI that is transparent, accountable, and committed to justice. The politicization of our justice system has eroded public trust, but that ends today. My mission as director is clear. Let good cops be cops and rebuild trust in the FBI. Working alongside the dedicated men and women of the Bureau and our partners, we will rebuild an FBI the American people can be proud of. And to those who seek to harm Americans, consider this your warning. We will hunt you down in every corner of this planet. Mission first, America always. Let's get to work." Close quote. Well, great stuff. And a couple of interesting things in there. Did you notice that when he talks about the storied history of the FBI, he begins that history with the G-men, the original FBI special agents, and he brackets it with 9/11. 9/11 was quite some time ago, folks. It suggests to me that he's implying that the FBI storied history has not continued for the last 20 years or so. And there's something else that's great. You may know that when you look at someone's profile on X, you can see how many people are following them, of course, but also how many people they follow. When I click on Patel's official FBI profile on X, we can see that although he has nearly 500,000 people following him, including me, Patel is following only one other account. Wonder who that might be? That's right. It's the official account of President Donald Trump. It's a nice touch, I think, this explicit testament that Patel follows only one, and that's President Trump. And speaking of X, before we get to the serious stuff, let's enjoy a few of the funnier memes released since the confirmation. Now, a lot of the funniest memes, unfortunately, have copyrighted music in them, so I can't share those with you because YouTube would hit me with a copyright strike. But here are a few without music that illustrate why the swamp is so fearful of FBI Director Patel. And just to be clear, these are obviously the works of others. I hope you enjoy them.
Some type of movement.
And here's one along the same theme, with Patel suddenly appearing at the doors of many of the swamp's swampiest creatures. And here's a post made by President Trump himself of a photo of Patel standing beside Trump at his desk, with Trump quoting General George S. Patton saying, quote, "May God have mercy upon my enemies, because I won't," close quote. And certainly the American people who've been observing Patel over his career in general and the confirmation process itself have high expectations of him as FBI director. Here's my good friend and fellow lawyer Joe Neerman noting, as I have, that Patel may not only have been the most important confirmation of Trump's second term, but perhaps the most important confirmation in American history. And here's another good friend, and actually my attorney, Ron Coleman, urging Patel to action, to follow through on what he's promised in targeting America's enemies. And here's a call out to the Old Testament in reference to America's expectations of Patel, from Isaiah 6:8, in which the biblical prophet Isaiah stood before a council of God and his angels and recounts, quote, "Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, 'Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?' And I said, 'Here I am, send me,'" close quote. The mission on which Isaiah would be sent, by the way, was to preach the faith to people who would not listen. A difficult task indeed. Now, these memes reflect the panic across the government right now following Patel's confirmation, and hopefully for good reason. All my life, and surely for decades prior, the federal government has been acting as a giant money laundering operation, with politicians and their hangers-on siphoning billions, maybe trillions, of dollars of graft into their own pockets. How do you imagine that so many congressmen and senators go from being people of typical wealth to being worth tens of millions of dollars on a government salary of less than $200,000 a year? And what about the FBI, purportedly intended to dig out this kind of corruption? They just turn a blind eye. If you were in the club, in the government mafia, it was simply expected that you would enrich yourself in this way at the cost of the American public and feel confident that you'd not be targeted for prosecution. This corruption, by the way, is not limited to just the Democrat Party. It's so normal a function of our money laundering government that it seems most everybody has succumbed to one degree or another. If everybody is corrupt, it seems unlikely that they would vote to confirm a change agent like Patel, yet they did by the slightest of margins. I, for one, would one day love to hear the inside story of exactly how President Trump and Elon Musk pulled off this fantastic confirmation. Now, what should we expect from Patel? We can't see the future, of course, so we can only speculate based on what Patel is saying, and we've read his confirmation post just a few moments ago, and what he said in the past. So let's take a look at what he said in the past. For one, we can certainly expect Patel to go after the bad actors who have been using lies and propaganda for years to hoax the American people into believing the lies they've relentlessly told about Donald Trump since he announced his run for his first presidential term. In no small part, we know this because Patel has written literally an entire book on this mission entitled Government Gangsters: The Deep State, the Truth, and the Battle for Our Democracy. It's a great book, and I'll link to it in the description. A particularly egregious example of all this is Adam Schiff, who for the first 2 years of Trump's first term promulgated an utter lie that Trump had engaged in Russian collusion to steal the election and was therefore an illegitimate president. This greatly hampered Trump's ability to staff his cabinet and carry out the agenda for which the American people had elected him. At the time, Schiff, who's now a U.S. Senator from California, was a California congressman who sat on a Congressional Security Committee, and he relentlessly lied to the American people that in his position on that Security Committee, he had access to evidence that he could not share publicly. It was classified, but which absolutely proved Trump's Russian collusion. It was, of course, an utter lie of a magnitude hard to distinguish from treason. One expectation we should have is that Patel will pursue these most vile of the swamp creatures like Schiff and his ilk. Let's hear Patel talk about it himself.
Adam Schiff is the worst criminal in Congress in the last 250 years. And what broke that we're going to talk about right now is Adam Schiff met with a whistleblower. Adam Schiff went to the podium day after day after day saying, I know nothing about this. We're not going to discuss it. We're going to protect it. And then Adam Schiff, led the prosecution of the impeachment trial in the Senate of President Donald Trump. Talk about someone who was conflicted out of the game because he was part of the hoax that brought Charmella in, manufactured that false accusation, and then peddled it out to the world. And he continued, not surprising, he's lied about almost everything in his life. But now he lied just to set up a presidential impeachment. And that's what I was talking about, these disinformation campaigns. And then he should be investigated because he lied to the world about his interactions with Charmella, who is a whistleblower, and I can't stress it enough, that started a presidential impeachment. Now, your history is way better than mine, but I can't remember the last time a president was actually impeached. It's a significant process and escalation, and it's reserved for the time when it actually shows a crime, not when it shows the manufacture of fake information to show a fake crime. The guy that found and manufactured the evidence with Charmella was the prosecutor in the case against the target of the investigation. That is the ultimate, from a prosecutorial standpoint, conflict of interest. But he knew what he was doing, and he thought he would never get exposed. And I think thanks to, I think it was John Solomon and his fantastic reporting, we now see what I've been saying for years, that I thought he met with him for sure, and it will come out, and it now has.
Now, you may recall that President Biden had issued a pardon to Adam Schiff, and that may concern you in this context. It's important to know, though, that that pardon is limited to Adam Schiff's misconduct around January 6th. Nothing else. He's still vulnerable on everything else. And of course, Patel recognizes that this is not limited to Adam Schiff. As he says, it's not a Republican or Democrat thing. It's a swamp monster thing. It's the entire corrupt system. Let's hear him discuss it in a post from my good friend, Dr. John Lotz.
Deep state is basically your unelected bureaucrat, and it's not a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party thing. It's a swamp monster thing. They don't care about labels. They care about the revolving door. And what they do is they establish leadership positions, and the revolving door assists them outside of government to get their golden parachutes for $10 million, guys like Mark Esper. And then people like Gina Haspel, Chris Wray, and Rod Rosenstein all partner together to work together after their time in government. And what they do is they just continue that spin of the door and make sure that only their friends get in at the expense of the department and agencies they're supposed to be running for the American people, but basically they run it to service their egos and their bank accounts.
Also vital, Patel has promised to profoundly reform the FBI itself, fundamentally changing the nature and character of the Bureau, today's Bureau, to the point of promising to shut down the FBI headquarters Hoover building on day one and turning it into a museum of the deep state. Here he says it in his own words.
I'd shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one and reopening the next day as a museum of the deep state.
And somebody has even been nice enough to mock up the main entrance to the FBI Hoover building with its new signage. Patel has also promised to finally release the Epstein files, documenting the horrific sexual corruption that took place for years on Jeffrey Epstein's private island, resulting in the apparent blackmail of hundreds of wealthy elites and politicians who engaged in unlawful sexual conduct there. Who will be exposed? Hopefully, with Patel's help, we'll soon find out. In fact, Patel has committed to releasing the so-called Epstein Black Book containing all the names of participants on day one.
On day one, roll out the Black Book.
So will you work with me on this issue so we know who worked with Jeffrey Epstein in building these sex trafficking rings?
Absolutely, Senator. Child sex trafficking has no place in the United States of America, and I will do everything, if confirmed as FBI director, to make sure the American public knows the full weight of what happened in the past.
The same, by the way, applies to other high-profile, long-buried matters of national history and security, such as the JFK files, the 9/11 files, and more. Finally, the genuine transparency that American citizens deserve from their government. Here's Patel advocating for a White House office dedicated to declassification of documents to make our government more transparent to the American people on every front.
You need a 24/7 declassification office, whatever you want to call it. Transparency, truth, whatever, I don't care. Sits in the White House, reports directly to you, and you take incoming from the United States of America. I want JFK. I want the 9/11 files. I want this. I want that. All the FBI, and this is a tool, this is something we didn't cover. What the deep state uses the most to cover up their corruption is an illegal application of the classification system. Remember the Lovebirds text from, this is a beauty, the Lovebirds text from FBI, DOJ land, Russiagate, Strzok and Page were texting each other. They were running the Russiagate investigation against Trump. They were the head of the counterintelligence unit at the FBI. And they're having an extramarital affair together. Can't make this stuff up. They're sending each other texts about how much they hate Trump and are going to create an insurance policy to stop Trump. Then we finally find those text messages. You know what the FBI and DOJ do for like a year? Redact them to congressional investigators and congressional men and women running the oversight of their agency. That's just one example. They broke the law. They broke the chain of command. They broke every regulation there is in the FBI. They weaponized the system of justice against a political target they hated. We found those text messages, and we got them declassified finally in full when I became Deputy Director of National Intelligence. And the world has now seen them, and they can read them. And that's the best form of transparency. That's why I want this 24/7 declassification office. Don't have me regurgitate it to you. Read it. Get the documents, get the files, get the memos. So now you know what happens. That's step one. Step two, get America the truth. And that's what that office would be for.
And if you need your memory refreshed on who he's referring to here, Peter Strzok, here's Peter Strzok testifying before Congress, smirking with the certainty that he would never be held accountable because he'd be sheltered by the deep state. I don't think Peter Strzok ever imagined that someday the director of the FBI would be Kash Patel. Heck, perhaps we'll even find out who these Freedom Front clowns are. Long reputed to simply be federal agents creating a propaganda myth of some kind of coordinated white supremacy movement, always remarkably physically fit for Americans, masked, and for some reason uniquely capable of preventing the exposure of their identities. And how about the progressive stormtroopers of Antifa and BLM, who've been committing arson, riot, and looting across American cities for years, as well as targeting, personally, journalists like Andy Ngo with violence, who've been working to expose them? Why was the FBI historically able to take down even the mafia, but somehow is helpless in countering violent Antifa and BLM? Is it because Antifa and BLM are protected paramilitary forces working for the deep state? Perhaps FBI Director Kash Patel can help us find out. Certainly, Andy Ngo is willing to help out as he offers here. Quote, would you like to know about how all the far-left violent extremist networks conspire to carry out federal crimes? I can explain their strategies for recruitment, funding, radicalization, and attacking, close quote. Let's hope Patel takes Andy up on his offer. Certainly, I'm as excited as anyone that Kash Patel has been confirmed as director of the FBI, though I'm not sure anyone is quite as excited as Patel's new boss, Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Actually, the true badass just got confirmed. Kash Patel, you must be beaming.
I am so excited. That is the breaking news today, too.
Yes.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to start working with him tomorrow.
Yes.
He's one of my favorite people in the world. And, you know, we were just out there with Ted and Ben, and we were talking about how the cabinet members, we all like each other and we get along. Well, I have, as the FBI director, one of my best friends. And so how fun is that? And we trust each other. We genuinely all love each other. And so it's going to be fun, and hopefully we're going to change the world, thanks to Donald Trump.
Great stuff indeed, and let's hope we see some world changing. With the confirmation of Patel and every other member of President Trump's cabinet and principal officers, along with the able assistance of Elon Musk, we may actually be watching a rebirth of constitutional America in real time. What a time to be alive, folks. What a time to be alive. As I wrap up, I just want to remind you again, if you like our content, the best way you could thank us is to hit that like and subscribe button. That's what tells the YouTube algorithm to share our content more broadly, expand the law of self-defense community, and it's free. And you may as well hit that bell to get notifications as well. Until next time, I remain Attorney Andrew Branca at lawofselfdefense.com. Stay safe. Hey folks, I want to take just a moment to invite you all to our upcoming live and 100% free Law of Self-Defense Hard to Convict webinar. This free webinar teaches you how to be hard to convict if you're ever compelled to use force in defense of yourself, your family, or your property. The webinar is live streamed by me personally, and there's plenty of opportunity for Q&A. Best of all, it's 100% free, but we do limit seats to allow for adequate Q&A. So I urge you to grab your seat right now by signing up at lawofselfdefense.com/hard to convict.